Okay, and we usually go a minute after, so we'll try to plug and play that way.
Okay. I'm going to start letting folks in, and then I'll go live on Facebook, and then we'll start a minute after.
All right. All right, folks, it looks like it is 1 minute after 8:30. And so that means you are joining us for a first coffee chats for this week and EASC. I'm Gary Clark, President and CEO of Economic Alliance, Snohomish County. And I am honored to bring to you another installation of Coffee Chats with the ASC. Today, we are joined by representatives from the Snohomish County Office of Recovery, Resiliency, Snohomish County Human Services Department, and Boys and Girls Club of Snohomish County. We'll be discussing the allocation of $20 million in American Recovery Plan Act funds towards increasing access to affordable childcare in the county, with a focus on children's social emotional development. The Boys and Girls Clubs of Snohomish County, as a licensed childcare provider, will also share the programs which aim to reduce learning loss, promote healthy lifestyles, and foster good character and citizenship in youth. Joining me today are the awesome folks who will join our panel, and that is Chrissie Grover-Roybal, who is the Deputy Director of the Office of Recovery and Resiliency. Chrissie, thank you for joining us today. And additionally, we have Karen Matson, who is the Developmental Disabilities and Early Learning Division Manager for Snohomish County Human Services Department. Karen, thank you for joining us today. We also have Marci Volmer, who is the Chief Operating Officer, Boys and Girls Clubs of Snohomish County. Marci, thank you for joining us. And we also have Shaila Khan, who is the Director of Child and Club Safety, Boys and Girls Clubs of Snohomish County. Thank you all, ladies, for joining us today. I believe our goal is to dive right into some PowerPoint slides and information. Chrissie, I think the floor is yours.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Gary. I'm so excited to be here today, and what a great group of people to talk about this issue. Hi, everybody. My name is Chrissie Grover-Roybal. I am the Deputy Director of Snohomish County's Office of Recovery and Resilience, and I've got some slides to share with you about what ORR is. That's the Office of Recovery and Resilience, and kind of how we're proposing, or how we plan to help support the county through some childcare investments. So a bit about ORR. We were started in the summer of 2021 as an office in the executive office by County Executive Dave Summers. And really our purview is to oversee $160 million that the county received through the federal government from the American Rescue Plan Act. And ARPA distributed money to local governments across the country, both at the state, county, and kind of city level. This funding is really supposed to be delivered to the community to support 4 strategies. Help the community kind of come out of COVID-19 to decrease the spread of the virus, replace lost revenue for governments and strengthen support for public services. And then it's kind of the immediate recovery piece. And then the next 2 pieces are really focused on building resiliency. So supporting the economic stabilization for households and businesses, and addressing some systemic social and economic challenges. We know that the pandemic harmed everybody, but it didn't harm all communities equally. And there are disproportionate impacts of the pandemic, and we're really trying to address those. One interesting thing about this funding is that it is one time. This is a big shot in the arm, for lack of a better word, one-time cash influx, and it needs to be spent, contracted by the end of 2024 and spent by the end of 2026. So there's a very quick timeline on this. We're trying to get this funding into the community to really be responsive to the COVID-19 pandemic and build that resiliency so we can move forward. There we go. So as Gary mentioned, the executive and the county council have set aside $20 million of that $160 million to support and address childcare in the county. We've seen a significant decrease from the pandemic in our childcare workforce. We lost about an estimated 25% of our childcare workforce during the pandemic. And we know that a reduced access to childcare means not only additional challenges for families, but additional challenges for individuals who are trying to re-enter or enter the workforce. So in our initial investments, we put about $8 million in 3 programs, which we'll talk about a little bit later: school-age childcare and mental health supports, supporting ECAP programs, and vouchers to help parents navigate and pay for childcare. We've seen some really exciting initial impacts so far. Over 2,000 families have been supported through our school-age childcare and mental health supports, and we're seeing an increase in staff preparedness to provide behavioral health services to children. We've got an additional $12 million that we're starting to distribute, and we are in the very early phase of that. $5 million of that is startup and expansion grants. So that's really investing in capital to support the expansion and development and build out of childcare facilities. Nearly $4 million in workforce development and retention. So really addressing that loss of staff members and people who are actually working in childcare facilities with children. $200,000 to support recruitment and mentorship so that we can start to build a childcare workforce that is reflective of the families they serve, an additional $3 million to continue that ECAP stabilization support. As I mentioned, the $12 million, we are in the process of finalizing and engaging in a co-design process with community members, subject matter experts, current and future providers and county departments to really make sure that the strategies that we're putting forward into the community will actually address the needs and not just kind of, what government thinks the needs are, but really what are people experiencing on the ground every day. We had our childcare facilities, NOFA, closed on Friday, and we had a significant number of applications for that. We're excited to get through those and make some funding recommendations. All of the funding is going to be going through a competitive funding process. I can speak to that a little bit later. And if any of you are interested in learning more about the childcare funding opportunities specifically, or ARPA more broadly, you can sign up at either snohomishcountywa.gov/recovery or send us an email at snohomishcountyrecovers@snoco.org, and we'll include you on our mailing list so you can have all of the latest and greatest information about the work that we're doing. And with that, I'm going to stop and I'll pass it to Karen.
Thanks, Chrissy. I do not have a lot to add other than what we know is, you all know, so I'm preaching to people who know, is that a stable workforce relies on families who have stable childcare and quality childcare, and that system of childcare and early learning was struggling prior to COVID, and then COVID just made it all the more challenging, as Chrissie described. And what we know is that the families that are furthest from opportunity are struggling the most to meet their basic needs and get access to early learning and childcare. And so that really is the intention, is to prioritize those families. The childcare vouchers that are starting to move out the door are in coordination with the Opportunity Council, who is a designated childcare aware. And these vouchers are primarily for families that are job seeking, as they are not eligible typically for Working Connections childcare. And for some families who then do obtain work, are not eligible for Working Connections childcare, but are below 60% AMI and still need support to maintain childcare. So we'll get more information out for you. That is a contract that came out at the very end of last year. So they're in the process of hiring staff. And as most of you know, that in and of itself is a challenge and continues to be a challenge for many of these contracts getting out the door, are businesses and organizations being able to hire staff. So I think maybe we can move forward, and then as we have questions, we can focus our information to what it is you all really want to know. So is Marci next, I think?
Yes, good morning, everybody. Let me pull up my slides here real quick. All right, so nice to see so many familiar and friendly faces this morning.
Marci, we're seeing your whole page and not your slideshow.
Let's see, how about that?
Nope. There we go. Yep.
Okay.
Perfect.
All right. Anyway, as Gary introduced, my name is Marci Volmer. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Boys and Girls Clubs of Snohomish County. And although I'm sure that most of you are familiar with the Boys and Girls Club and the work that we do in the community, we just wanted to take a couple minutes to do a quick overview before we jump into how the funding has impacted us. So Boys and Girls Clubs of Snohomish County has been in existence since 1946 in Snohomish County. So we are celebrating our 77th anniversary this year. So really excited about that. We have 15 club locations within the county. You can see those listed on your screen. And you'll notice that we have a pretty wide reach. We go as far north as Arlington, west to Tulalip and Mukilteo, east to Granite Falls, Sultan, and south to Edmonds and Alderwood, and everywhere in between. So we try to have a club where kids and families need us most. Just some statistics for you to see on your screen, a little about our demographic. This is from our 2021 annual report. We're currently working on the 2022 annual report. In 2021, as we were coming out of the pandemic, we served over 17,000 youth. That was down about 10,000 from 2019. So slowly getting back to where we were pre-pandemic. Our average daily attendance was right around 2,000. And for 2022, that is over 3,000. So we are slowly getting back and seeing kids back in our buildings. You'll also see that 55% of our youth are youth of color. And then the breakdown between male and female and non-binary are pretty typical, about half and half. Also, more than half of our kids are free and reduced lunch, which makes us really a perfect organization to partner with the county on initiatives such as this. As Gary mentioned, some of our priority outcomes, our priority outcomes are academic success. So we want to make sure that all of our youth are graduating on time with a plan to succeed, whether that's going into an internship, into college, into a trade school, just having a plan. So we're working really closely with that right now, and as far as workforce development as well in youth. Good character and citizenship. We want all of our kids to leave our programs with a strong character and being ready to make a positive difference in their community. And then really most importantly in regards to this funding that we're discussing is the healthy lifestyles. We believe that healthy lifestyles is not just eating the 4 food groups, but also how you are social and emotional, as well as your physical well-being. And that is where the behavioral and mental health support funding comes into place. We do provide before and after school childcare year-round. We also are full day childcare for school-age children during any school breaks. We're open on most school holidays because we find that a lot of our parents do have to work. And so we need to have a safe place for kids during that time. And let me turn this over to Shaila real quick to talk a bit about the youth mental health and what that program looks like in our clubs. Shaila?
All right, good morning, everyone. Again, my name is Shaila Khan. I'm the Director of Child and Club Safety for Boys and Girls Clubs of Snohomish County. And kind of my role and involvement with this is that, you know, when it comes to safety, it's a lot around physical safety, but what we have also been talking about over the last couple of years, especially through the pandemic and as we've come out of it, is really the emotional safety and kids feeling like they have a place to belong, and that the staff that are there with them care about them and their well-being. And not only with the kids at all of our clubs, but also the staff, and providing a safe space for them too. And so some of the things that we have had the opportunity over the last couple of years to do around behavioral health with the staff, and also especially with the kids in our clubs, is that we have worked actually with the county to become a trauma-informed organization, which has included tips and tools for the staff, a lot of staff training that everyone from our administrative level down to our youth development professionals that are working directly with kids are going through. And we're talking and focusing a lot around social and emotional learning practices, which is some of the examples on here. Some of these are like Smart Moves, Boys and Girls Club programs. Our staff is all currently going through a PACS tools training, which is additional training around social SEL practices. Some of the things that they are doing in the clubs are things like regular emotional check-ins. We're doing those with kids as they arrive after school or when they come in the mornings, along with checking in with the staff. The Zen Zone, that photo. So clubs are working on creating calming spaces within their clubs, just so that kids are learning how to kind of regulate their emotions and understand what, you know, how they're feeling, and talking about and working on coping skills. I would say probably the biggest sort of thing that we have done around behavior support is that we currently have 5 behavior support specialists that I am working directly with, that are located at 5 of our different club locations within the county. And they are the ones, along with the staff, that are really focused on running groups with kids around SEL practices and really implementing these things and these trainings that everyone is going through within the club. Again, I'm working directly with those 5 individuals. We are working on hiring more just so that we have that support within each club, kind of along with what the staff is doing with the kids. They're also providing any sort of family resources that are needed. If it's something that maybe Boys and Girls Club cannot provide, that we have the opportunity to share resources with them within the community. And I'm going to turn it back to Marci if she has anything else to add on this slide.
Not on this slide, but I would be remiss if I did not thank the county and Chrissie and Karen for the opportunity to work together. From the very minute COVID hit, it seemed like Karen and I were in contact, and they truly do have the best for families in mind. So we appreciate that. And with that, I'm ready to turn it back over.
All right.
I just want to add that YMCA also was a recipient of these funds, and YMCA and Boys and Girls Club have worked very closely together to make sure implementation is aligned. And it have really, both organizations stepped up quickly to put this in place. I will say that with ECAP as well, social emotional development is a priority. And I think I can say this, it is surprising to me that this still remains not a significant priority nationally, statewide, and locally, because what we know is if we can invest now in healthy social development for children, that will give them incredibly positive outcomes as adults and really reduce impacts such as graduation rates or rates involvement in the criminal system. So it's so critical. And there's a fair amount of social emotional development and early learning available, but it has been shocking to me. I have not done school age for a while, and it was shocking to me how little information is out there around supporting social emotional development for school age children. So this key really was to make sure that parents had a place to bring their children so they could go to work, and that safe place was safe and quality, and that children had a place to go, and that parents didn't have to leave their children someplace they didn't feel comfortable with or wasn't safe, including at home, because maybe they're not old enough to manage alone. And that while they were there, they were getting the supports they needed. And I also want to add, so we started this at a time when schools were closed, and most school age parents find a sense of relief when their children hit the K-12 system and are in school full day, and their childcare bill goes from full day to half day. And then during the pandemic, what they experienced was having to go back and pay full day childcare, and most families financially were not in a place to do that. And even last fall in 2022, we were really unclear whether schools were going to be able to stay in session full time, or if parents were going to have to pivot back to paying for full-time childcare. So,
thank you, Karen. Thank each of you for your comments and presentations. I'd like to remind everyone before we start our question and answer section of this update and coffee chat that each of you in the audience, please provide or submit your questions as you wish in the chat. So that we can refer to them as we get into this Q&A. I will start off because we know that our children are our most precious and meaningful and worthy resource that we have, with a question about the $7.8 million in childcare and social emotional development programs investment that are to benefit Snohomish County residents and businesses. So how will we invest these dollars? And I'll just throw that to the panel and leave it open. Go ahead, Chrissie.
Sure. So I can take that one. So the initial 7.8 million, as I shared, is in 3 programs. And one is this behavioral and mental health supports for families or for school age children. 2.35 is going to support our ECAP programs, which are early learning programs that are supporting some of our lowest income and most vulnerable families in Snohomish County. And then $2.5 million is childcare vouchers and navigation support. And as Karen mentioned, that's really helping those individuals who don't qualify for some state level childcare vouchers, who, because you have to be in the workforce, if they're participating in training, there's a bit of a gap at the state level. So we're coming in, supporting them, allowing them to participate in job training programs, and then eventually transfer to these state funded voucher programs. And I would say, I think that this set of investments really represents kind of the ideal space that ARPA hits, where we're both meeting individual families who are vulnerable, supporting them in a very intensive way, but then also providing services at a broad level to support the mental health challenges that we're seeing kind of across the community. So we're kind of working up here and down here in these investments. Karen or Marci or Shaila, do you want to add anything?
All right, I see heads nodding. Okay, Marci.
I would just say that one thing that we found with a lot of our families coming out of the pandemic is they had to really make a choice of, okay, now we have to transition into getting back to the workforce and really looking at what was that going to make sense for them at all. So we found if families weren't unemployed, a lot of people became underemployed just because of the cost of childcare, where they were having to take maybe part-time positions instead of full-time ones, so that they could have the flexibility if school was going to cancel, if their school was going to be closed for 2 weeks, and all of that just really put people in a tailspin. So for us to have some room to kind of work with people and say, no, it's okay, we got this, thanks to the county, we can keep the kids longer, you can go ahead and go back to full-time where maybe they weren't before. So it's the relief. I mean, we get to see that in the families, where maybe the people writing the check don't get to see it as much, but just the relief for parents knowing that, yeah, okay, we can work, we can put food on the table, and it's a safe place. So again, thank you for that, Chrissie and Karen.
Thank you. Thank you all. Just moving on to another question tied to this, specifically, how will the investment in childcare vouchers and navigation support specifically benefit job-seeking families and businesses in Snohomish County?
I'm happy to take that one. There will be 2 childcare navigators, and they will primarily be out and about in the community. So they're working closely with our family resource centers, with our employment service providers, to connect with those families that are job seeking. It's very challenging when you're job seeking to have your children in tow with you, as many of you could imagine. So the goal is to quickly help those families identify a child care center and provide the subsidy for them to attend. And I think more importantly, to really help families navigate the childcare system, to understand how you can locate a childcare center that meets your family's needs, to ask the right questions to see if it's a good fit. Once employed, to apply for Working Connections childcare or other subsidy, and to continue to complete the paperwork and associated things to keep that Working Connections childcare. Washington State makes Working Connections childcare very easy, and I'm grateful for that. And it is still challenging to navigate all of those systems if you haven't. And what we know is eventually they will come to a place where they will be over income for that subsidy. So part of this childcare navigator role is to connect families with career and wage progression programs, connection to other public benefit programs that can offset some of the other costs so they can focus it on childcare. What we know is there are families that are probably paying more in childcare than they are on their mortgage. And it's hugely challenging. And I kudos to the state Working Connections childcare reimbursement has gone up significantly, which is really allowing childcare centers to have a little bit more wiggle room in their financials. It's a no profit, slim profit margin for most childcare providers. And for working families that do not qualify for Working Connections childcare, it's very challenging to pay for childcare. So trying to do a more comprehensive job of supporting families to meet their basic needs, including childcare.
Thank you. I want to just dive in really quick just to make sure that there's some clarity here. If someone would like to speak to the childcare choice navigators positions that are available, I see there's a link in the chat. Would any of you like to speak to that?
I appreciate that the link is in there. I know they're in the process of looking to hire 2 folks from the Snohomish County area. So hopefully this will be up fast. And it is a lot of money, and it is not a lot of money. When you look at the cost of childcare money, this is going to go very, very, very fast.
Karen, do you mean a lot of money for the roles, the navigator roles, or
for the vouchers?
I was just being silly. I got that. I just thought.
Sorry. Yeah, it's enough money to pay for staff for a couple of years, hoping that we can find a way to sustain it long term, because I think it's a huge need in our community. And I think, maybe Chrissie said this, maybe she didn't. This is one-time funding. So we really listened to what the folks in the community had to say about what the needs were right now that would move us forward as a community in the next few years. And the challenge is going to be is to figure out how we're going to sustain this and keep moving forward, because it is not going to solve our childcare challenges that this community faces.
Okay, all right, thank you. We do have a question in the chat. I just thought we'd get to that as well. Samantha from Homage kind of poses some comments here. Having both worked in nonprofit childcare space and being a parent of a school-age child, I wonder how our government agencies are looking to the future of sustainable childcare. I think let me see if I can pull this down some. If you price childcare in a way that middle class families who don't qualify for any support, you can't afford to hire quality staff who stay long enough to support good outcomes, is there a long-term plan to address this need? Any thoughts on that?
First of all, thank you, Samantha, for that question. I think that, I mean, that is a huge problem and it's not a new problem. And, you know, we are a large nonprofit organization and we're hiring. So, you know, it is a very difficult space to attract and retain quality staff at nonprofit childcare rates. As you mentioned, we're always looking towards that. What we are hoping is that some of the outcomes that we can prove through the programs that we're currently doing will be a good enough story to tell to private funders and foundations going forward. We're keeping very close track of the outcomes with our social emotional behavior support, and it's a hot topic with private funders as well. So we're looking in that direction. But I don't have a good answer for your question, because that is a question that keeps me up at night myself. Karen and Chrissie, any thoughts on that too?
Well, I am grateful that this has been a topic for you all on many occasions in the past year or two, because I think it's that community awareness has been huge. And I think it's going to, well, I know it will be a collective approach that will answer the question, because there's no easy answers. You know, I will say that I mentioned that the increase in Working Connections childcare reimbursement has gone up substantially, which has brought a lot of financial relief. I don't think it's by any means moved it to the place where they can afford the high quality staff kind of piece that's named here, but it's certainly bought them a little bit of financial stability. And the challenge is that rate is now more than families who are not qualifying for Working Connections can afford to pay for childcare tuition. So we're going to have to find an answer, because if we want to have employees for businesses, then we're going to have quality places for families to take their children that they can afford. And I think when you couple that with the challenging housing prices in our community, it's very difficult to be a family with children needing childcare right now.
All right, well said. Thank you, Marci and Karen. I have another question tied to the funds for early childhood education and assistance program providers. Wondering, with the 2.35 million of investment to stabilize this space, how do you see that impacting the availability and accessibility for childcare for families in the county? I know we've kind of touched on this a little bit, but can you dig a little deeper into that 2.35 million?
So we've identified this as childcare, and it's broadly early learning, which is inclusive of all programs that serve children birth to age 8 and in school age till 12 for early learning. So in this community, we serve more than 2,000 families in the ECAP program that is both part day and full day. And these are extremely low income families. Majority of them are below 110% of the federal poverty level or 130% of the state area median income. And during COVID, ECAP was the primary place these families receive the support to maintain health and safety and connection to basic needs. A high percentage of these families, over 50%, English is not their first language. They do not all have access to internet. So how they got their information was from the folks that they trusted and were getting ECAP. ECAP services had to go virtually very quickly. It was a lot of extra work, a lot of extra staff time. And when they returned in person hybrid, the costs were more because they had reduced class sizes, they had increased health and safety issues, much like the childcare folks had, other than they were serving 2,000 children and needed to be providing services all along. Prior to COVID, what we knew was that the reimbursement rates for ECAP were not sufficient enough to run the program, that these programs were running on a margin, and the majority of organizations operating ECAP on behalf of Snohomish County were putting general funds into it. So the goal of these funds was to address the increased costs, but also to sustain these programs long enough that hopefully there will be some shifts in funding in this biennium budget at the state level to increase the funds for ECAP and move them to at least a place where they think they can financially sustain that program. As a community, we cannot afford to lose an early learning program that serves 2,000 of our most vulnerable children and families. And I will add, a recent saturation study indicates that at least 2,000 more children in our county are eligible and not being served within an ECAP or a Head Start program.
Thank you, Karen. I guess going down the list here, how will 2.9 million in investment in school-age childcare and social emotional development and mental health supports specifically benefit enrolled children and families in Snohomish County? So that 2.9 million investment in school-age childcare.
Yeah, I'm going to respond first and then let Marci jump in. So as Chrissie said, we focused a lot on recovery and now we're moving to resiliency. So this next phase is really a lot less focus on childcare subsidy at the school age and a lot more focus on the behavioral health piece. So Marci, do you want to?
Sure. Well, and if there is a positive that came out of COVID, one of them was the kind of the elevated place that childcare lives in the world now, but the social emotional piece of this has been amazing. I mean, now that we have training, we have people on staff that their whole job is to be watching out for kids and to be able to notice when maybe kids need a little extra attention. They're not also having to make snack and drive a van and do all the things. Their whole job is to concentrate on giving the kids the tools they need to be able to make good, positive, healthy choices for themselves going forward. But also, to me, one of the most beneficial things has been our staff have really gotten to have a deep dive into training that we've never been able to do before. We've brought people in. We've, like Shaila mentioned, the PACS tools training. It's fantastic, very deep training, and not only about the why it's important, but how to do it, actual tools to do with youth so that we're supporting them. And just the modeling of watching professionals who are professional behavior support, it's trickled down to all the levels of our clubs. Shaila, do you have anything to add about the outcomes you've seen?
I think I don't have kind of numbers and those things, but as we have had those behavior support staff in place, really hearing feedback that they've seen differences. And the thing that we talk a lot about with staff when we do all of these trainings is that the importance of all of this work that we're doing around social emotional learning is that the coping skills that are being provided for the youth in all of our programs, that then they can take with them as they grow older into teenagers and into adulthood, that really clubs, especially those that have the behavior support staff located at their club, that they are seeing differences. Kids are really starting to understand how to recognize their emotion and kind of what that looks like, and just having that as a focus. And it's a conversation that we are having kind of the same language within our entire organization, and then also outside of our organization. So
yeah. And I want to add that both organizations have used their behavioral health staff to support parents as well. What we know is that this is has been an incredible stressful time for families. And I would say this fall, people had this sense that I think last fall people still knew it was going to be challenging. So they kind of had the mindset like, okay, well, this is still going to be challenging. And I think this fall, folks kind of had this sense like, okay, we're good to go. We're moving forward. And I think it has been at least as challenging this fall, if not more than previous ones. So really supporting parents, helping them have some strategies both for themselves and their children, because what we know is that at home, that ability collectively as a family to find that safe space and manage your relationships is critical. So I give both organizations a lot of credit for having a thought around that piece. And I think I will add, I mean, I always say to folks, this may not be that respectful, but I think somehow we thought that working parents did something with their children. And I think during COVID, what we figured out is that no, parents actually need to take their children somewhere safe and get childcare, and you have to have those places available and they have to be affordable. And now I hope what people will realize is that those aren't just a place that parents drop their kids off and kind of put them in a drawer for the day, but those are a place where children are getting supported around their development, both academically and socially, emotionally.
Yeah, and we should be clear that because I'm a former latchkey kid and also grew up in Washington, D.C., where in public housing, and you would the alternative to not having these services is not a very pleasant view. And I think when we have Snohomish County mayors and others looking for public safety focuses, the connection point to that business and other things is really clear here as to why this is important and imperative. I do want to add that I did start in public schools in DC, so I can do basic arithmetic, and I think there's about 12 million left over from the funds that you've shared. So I'd love to hear where the rest of those funds are being allocated.
Yeah, thanks, Gary. So as we've talked a little bit about, our first set of funding is really about stabilizing the system, making sure that we're meeting those new needs in the behavioral health space, providing support to make sure that programs can stay open. With the remaining 12 million, we're looking to see what can we do with a large amount of one-time funding to really expand availability and accessibility of childcare in Snohomish County. When we were looking around, in a lot of our community events, childcare kept coming up. And as you mentioned, childcare, it's a public safety issue, it's a workforce development issue, it's it's just something that impacts so many people. And in Snohomish County, we estimate that about 80% of families live in what the state's called a childcare desert. And that means that there just isn't childcare available to families, whether or not they can afford it, it's just not there. So with this remaining 12 million, we're really looking to increase the number of slots that are available in the county. And that's through a couple of different avenues. That's both through investing in capital facilities, just to build out, spaces that can be used as licensed childcare. And then also building that workforce. So bringing people into childcare and saying, what are the supports, incentives that you need to consider childcare as a career? Early on, when we were talking with a lot of our current providers, they said, you can build as much as you want, but I don't have staff to staff it. So those buildings will sit empty. So, put money into the facility, sure, but really we need help bringing people in. And I think we're going to have to get creative with it. So in workforce, we're really trying to look at how do we bring those folks who are providing community childcare solutions that aren't, necessarily licensed or certificated now? How do we bring them in and say, what will it take to help you get your certificate so that you can work in a licensed childcare center? We know that childcare happens kind of outside of traditional accounts, and how do we bring, that parent that's watching their kid and maybe one or two neighbor kids and say, We want to help you open up a small business as a childcare center in your home. What supports do you need to get there? And instead of just watching 3 kids, you can now watch 6 kids. So you've got more income coming in, and we have more childcare slots available in your home community.
Thank you. Thank you. I think I want to segue really quickly because we do have a representative. As we know, we have our nonprofits here, we have our county, but we also seem to have some federal representation in our audience. And so I want to make sure that we give representative from USDA, which is the Department of Agriculture, to an opportunity to chime in really quickly and introduce himself. William, if you could spotlight our special guest, that would be great. But go ahead, Doctor, if you'd like to join and introduce yourself.
Good morning, all. My name is Dr. Giorgio Arche. My last name is difficult to pronounce, so most people around the USDA just call me Dr. G. I'm the small business coordinator for the U.S. Department of Agriculture Food and Nutrition Service. And as you know, we deal with food services for the elderly, school lunch programs, things like this. So when I saw that this was happening today, I knew that there was an integral component of what you do and what we do, and that it was important for me to be a part of this today. So that's one component and one reason why I'm here today. The second reason is this: at USDA, we recognize the impact on women-owned small businesses during COVID. It was dramatic and it was terrible. We lost a lot of bright upcoming businesses and stable businesses for people who had to basically take care of the family. And when we looked at the number of contracts that we had over the course of COVID, with women-owned small businesses, one of the things we saw that it was terrible. So I was stolen from the U.S. Small Business Administration over to the Department of Agriculture to help change that. And so it was really important for me to be here today to listen to you all from a nonprofit and profit standpoint, because there are opportunities for grants within the USDA that may be accessible to your conversation here today, on the one hand. But secondly, we have the capability, I have the capability to ensure that once women-owned small businesses and other small businesses as well, like service disabled, small businesses, 8As, hub zones, once they're certified, I have the ability to say, okay, this contract for a food and nutrition service looks like it's going to a large business. Did we do enough research to determine whether a small business is capable? And if I feel that they haven't done it, the regulation allows me to send it back to them and say, did you look at this company? This is a small business. Did you look at this company? This is a women-owned small business. And by doing that, I can reinforce necessary research to increase the attention and focus on women-owned small business and other small businesses that get contracts with the federal government, because as you all know, the US federal government is the largest contractor in the world. And so I wanted to make this presentation to you all today to let you know that we're interested in doing what we can to have an impact on what you're saying and what you're seeing out there. So if you all feel that there are programs that can strengthen what you're trying to do, don't feel that the search, now it's not my area, but the grants programs that are available through the federal government. And I heard you say that what you have available now is a one-time grant at that level. Well, the federal government has a lot of grant programs as well. And I will definitely look into that and see what I can find that falls in line with what you're doing. But on the other hand, you have a great clientele, a great environment. And I think that it may be possible that we can work together with women-owned businesses in your community to increase the vendor population so that then I can use my authority to make sure that our agency is looking at and examining opportunities for women-owned small business and other small businesses to get some of these contracting dollars to do some of the work that you all want done in your community. And so thank you for allowing me to interrupt, to step in today and introduce myself in the company. And I have a PowerPoint presentation of what we do, and I'll forward that to Mr. Clark so that everyone can get a copy of it. But it will detail all of the things that we contract for, all of the NAICS codes, and it will emphasize the fact that I am definitely looking to increase the women-owned small business participation in our contracting program. So thank you all for letting me speak for a little. And Mr. Clark, I really appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Well, that was awesome. Thank you. Dr. G is what you said they call you. So I'm going to go with that. Really appreciate your presence today and connecting the dots between our youth, childcare, and business community. It's really helpful. And so there are some comments in the chat. I think there's a connection point there. So thank you again. As we have, we're a little short on time, but this has been excellent. So I would like to get some level setting here as we've talked about the funds from the county. Maybe a final question from me, and then we can go around the room to kind of give some closing remarks. This final question would be tied to obviously the allocations that you all have talked about from ORR office at the county level. I guess knowing that we're going into these different pockets, could you all explain kind of the measurements of this, how we'll evaluate the impact of the funds?
Thanks. So with this, we're actually required by the federal government to submit an annual performance report that outlines precisely that. What are the metrics that we're looking at to say we either were successful, we met needs, or we didn't, and we need to pivot and improve. So in the childcare space, we're looking at how many families are we serving? Are they from our target population? So are they those families that are furthest from opportunity, our lowest income families, making sure that not only do we have a broad reach, but are we reaching the right set of folks? We've got, as Marci mentioned, we've got some measurements around the impact of the social emotional supports that we're providing. And then looking forward, we're going to be looking at things like who is entering childcare, the childcare workforce. Are they successful and are they completing their training programs? Are they entering a career position and do they feel stable? And are they staying in that position for a while? How many slots are we creating? How many buildings are we building to increase availability and accessibility? So we have a whole kind of performance plan put together. Happy to share that with folks. We have the one from last year. We'll be putting another one out later. We also are planning to put together a public-facing dashboard that looks at not only our childcare investments, but all of the ARPA investments at a program level to say, how are each of these programs doing? Who are we serving? Where geographically are the individuals who are being served by these programs? And then rolling that all up into a high level. So we can say, not only how did each individual program fare, but what was the impact of this $160 million in 2026 when it's all spent and the reports are finalized? Are we going to be able to say we did right by the Snohomish County community and we were responsive to community needs and we had a big impact? Or not, and what can we do better, and how can we improve? So more forthcoming soon on this dashboard. I'm really excited about it. It's gonna, we're really trying to be as transparent as possible with the performance of all of these programs and what we're doing. And I will share the information with this group as that gets made public.
Outstanding. Are there any other thoughts there, or?
Well, I think I'm just going to go back to what we know is that it seems like a lot of money, and we knew immediately we could have spent the whole 80 million of ARPA funds on childcare and early learning and still not made it whole. So this is really our opportunity to learn from everything, to identify what is working and how can we put systems and funding in place to sustain those. How do we continue these community conversations to find community solutions to something that I think everybody feels passionate about wanting to improve within our communities. So that falls into my world, and that will continue to be my work even after ARPA funding is gone, is how do we keep moving forward on this work.
Outstanding. Okay, so we're down to the last few moments of this coffee chat. So I want to make sure that I give each of you a chance to give maybe 1 minute of closing remarks tied to your organization or your efforts. And so I'm going to just leave that open for each of you to dive in. I think, Marci, you with the Boys and Girls Clubs, if you'd like to start.
Sure. So a little bit on the measurement. I think in the slides that I shared, you could see our measurement is a little more about feet walking in the door. And we report out, to the county, of course, with any federal funding. We do a lot of reporting, but just seeing that more people are coming in the door, both people that we knew ahead of COVID and new people since that time. Also, just the anecdotal reports from clubs and behaviors changing and parents reporting that kids are doing better just all the way around. All of the programs that Shaila mentioned, and she'll get a moment again, is it's really prevention. What we do, it's suicide prevention, it's substance abuse prevention, it's violence prevention, all of it. And so if we can wrap that around and have it be part of childcare, I think we're all winning. So we're really proud of that. And thank you to the county. So Shaila, anything to add to that?
I just want to say first, thanks for having me today. And I really, kind of seeing this impact and being on the ground level and talking to staff and working with families and seeing the kids, that again, I go back to just that it's this universal language, and it's been, put in the forefront, especially after the last couple of years. And that it's this continued conversation. And I am really proud that we are a part of this work, and that we are being able to provide these resources to our families and to our staff.
Thank you. I guess Karen and Chrissie, do you have any final words?
I think I would say if you run into, encounter an early learning child and or childcare provider, say thank you for their really hard work. It's been a really challenging 3 years for them and will continue to be. And if you see somebody that you're like, wow, they're really great with kids, say, you should think of a career in early learning and childcare. How can I help you get connected? Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Karen.
Yeah, just echoing what Karen said, is all of this relies on community and individual and interpersonal networks. So please spread the word about the programs that we've already started, and any upcoming funding opportunities. We really want to make sure that this is funding that can reach every single corner of Snohomish County, and we are excited that you're all showing such an interest in childcare. I think there's a ton of possibility and potential in this space.
I'm going to say one more thing. I worked in homeless housing for years, like 20 plus years. And when I transitioned out of that world, I knew I needed to go one of two places, either employment or childcare, early learning, because those are the two things that will change our communities. So the more we can invest in early learning and childcare, the better youth and adult outcomes we will have in the future. It is totally worth the investment now for the future.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I thank you all for joining us today. Dr. G as well at USDA. I used to carry along with me throughout my college career a little $1 food stamp, and it took a while before I realized the connection point between USDA and my early lunch program in Washington, D.C., and then the connection point to rural America and urban America and those connection points. I do want to make one side note connected to this. So we talked about business, we talked about early learning, childcare, And we also talked about the connection point to the county and its efforts, but we also have at EASC, Alyssa Jackson at Snow STEM, as well as Career Connect Washington, which is our efforts connected to these efforts. So if by chance you're looking for a deepened connection, please reach out to Alyssa Jackson at Snow STEM. Additionally, I want to thank you all for joining us today on this coffee chat piece. And we do have, I'll let William catch up to me a little bit here. We do have another event coming up, which is the Chamber Partners After Hours, which is on January 19th, and it's a connection between the Kenmore and Bothell Chamber. So it's going to be a great opportunity for networking. I believe there will be opportunity for beverages, food trucks, good fun with EASE, Kenmore Bothell Chamber members as well. And again, we will have VIP seating, drink tickets, and networking, all those good things that make of a networking opportunity. Coming up on January 31st is our next Coffee Chats opportunity, which is tied to some of the conversations about contracting. And so contracting opportunities for Snohomish County will be the focal point, again at 8:30 a.m. to 9:30. And last but not least, what we like to do is bring everyone to screen. So if you have been off screen, please join us on screen. And I'm going to mix it up just a little differently today. Yesterday was MLK Day. I know you saw a lot of quotes. One quote I'll share with you tied to children was, "I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character." Folks, I thank you all for joining us. Please raise your coffee cups or drinks if you have them. This has been an amazing day. And please move forward Tuesday and look after our children. Take care.